Betul. Tes, tes. Is um, good afternoon, everyone. So this is a tryout for the webinar today. We are checking if everything is okay.
Hello, Dr. Basikin, how are you? It's Ibra here. I can't hear you, you've gone on mute. Hello?
Hi, Ibra.
Hi, can you hear me okay there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you now. I just
Ibra?
wanted to check if you can see my PowerPoint.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, yes.
I think I'm not connected to everyone, to no one. Okay, that's good.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Let me just check.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinars. Today we have 3 speakers to talk and discuss a very interesting topic with us. The first speaker is Professor Dr. Margana M.A. M.Hum. He is one of the staff members of English Education Department, Faculty of Languages and Arts, Yogyakarta State University, Indonesia. He obtained his undergraduate degree in the English Education Department of Yogyakarta State University, formerly IKIP Jogja. And he got the Masters of Humanity in Linguistics from Gajah Mada University in 1999. He also earned his Masters of Arts in Applied Linguistics from University of Newcastle in 2005, and he gained the doctoral degree from University of Gajah Mada, majoring in linguistics in 2012. His interests include bilingualism, code switching, discourse analysis, and second language acquisition. Professor Margona will be the first speaker, and he's going to talk about teaching English oriented to left and right brain development. And I believe that this topic is a very interesting topic because orienting on both sides of the brains is considered a new way to teach. There is a common belief that the left side and the right side of the brain have different functions and serve different purposes. But researchers also share their agreement that they are equally important and they must be optimally developed together. And then the second speakers will be Dr. Ibra Butt. He is the director for the MSc TESOL at Queen's University Belfast. His research and teaching interests include the intersection of the applied linguistics, including TESOL, literacy studies, and higher education. Much of this recently has been concerned with digital literacy and writing, and this interest emerged through two recent books. The 2017 books entitled Assignments as Controversies, and the other one published in 2019, co-author monograph academic writings, The Dynamics of Knowledge Creation. And Dr. Ibrar Bhatt will be presenting his work with Dr. Udi Samanhudi, who holds a doctoral degree in TESOL and Applied Linguistics from Queen's University, Belfast, the United Kingdom. He is currently an English lecturer at the Department of English Education, Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa University, Banten. He is also the head of international office at the same university. His research interest includes critical thinking in English language education, discourse analysis, identity and reconstruction in EFL context, narrative research, and professional as researchers in general. He can be contacted via his email address at udisamanhudi@untirta.ac.id. Now we are going to go to the first session of today webinars. Professor Margono will be talking about 40 minutes in time. And he's going to talk about teaching English oriented to left and right brain development. Professor Dr. Margono, time is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to share ideas concerned with my topic, namely teaching English oriented to left and right brain dominance or development. Let me share the PowerPoint. Just a minute. As mentioned by moderator, Papa Pasikan PhD, today I would like to share ideas concerning teaching English oriented to left and right brain dominance. Before we start my presentation, I would like to highlight the keywords in my presentation. At least there are 4 keywords. The first one is hemisphericity, which is defined as the body of research on the processing differences between the left and right sides of the brain. The second one is right hemisphere, left hemisphere, and the last one is corpus callosum, which is defined as a thick band of nerve fibers that connects the hemispheres of the brain. It is evident that the brain serves as the central unit of a memory processing, or the central processing unit called CPU of the human beings, including us. This says that English teachers or lecturers should know the nature of the brain and the way of processing and obtain information. However, not all of English teachers or lecturers are aware of how the left and right brain work and how important left and right brain dominance is. Rarely do they accommodate the development of those hemispheres in the process of English language teaching and learning year after ELTL. As a result, second language learners tend not to maximally acquire or lateralize the English materials when they are involved in ELTL on the grounds that English language teachers OLTS tend to give an emphasis on the development of left brain instead of the left and right brain dominance. In summary, I would like to highlight that to raise the issue of the accommodation of the right and left brain development as manifested in the process of ELTL is very, very important for us as English teachers or lecturers. The following I present the anatomy of human brains. You can see some parts of brains which are very, very important for us to know, dealing with the anatomy of human brains, such as primary motor area, promotor area, frontal field area, broadcast area, and the like. This says that we have to protect our brain in order that our brain is not damaged in nature, because it's very dangerous if our brain is damaged. Otherwise, we cannot do anything. In relation to this, the following presents part of the brain and its functions: touch and pressure taste as manifested in some colors, vision, face recognition, hearing, smell, speech, motor control, and center sulcus. Remember that when we talk about our brain, at least there are two brains. In this case, big brain or large brain and small brain. Large brain is very important to keep, but to keep the memory, but it only takes a short time or short-term memory. On the other hand, small brain takes our memory in long-term one. This says that as English teachers or lecturers, we have to struggle hard to drive our English materials in order that the students could keep the memory, the materials of English in long-term memory on a small brain. It's not only put in short-term memory. Therefore, deep learning instead of surface learning should be highlighted when we are involved in English language teaching and learning. Added to this, when we talk about the brain, we can divide into two types of brains. The first one is left brain and the right brain. Each brain side has its own function, which is different each one another. In short, English language teachers, lecturers should be familiar with the functions of left brain and right brain. Then, knowing the functions of left brain and right brain, we can select materials, methods, techniques, media, and the like to accommodate the developments of the second language learner's brain, both left brain and right brain, that we are going to focus on our presentation, my presentations. As mentioned earlier, in the anatomy of brain, our brain, it consists of some cortical areas. The yellow one, the yellow color, is concerned with primary auditory. If there is damage on it, of course, it will be a problem for us in auditory. And then primary sensory, primary visual, primary motor, and the like. These parts should be well understood to protect our brain. The following present the sensory motor integration. The first process of the functions of our brain takes, for example, if we we function or we activate our labyrinth. The labyrinth activates the right side of our body. On the other hand, when we activate right brain, the part of our body, this is in the left one, will work. This is the opposite of the brain that we activate. Therefore, we should realize the functions of each brain in order that English language teaching and learning that we design is successful in nature. Let us come to the theoretical review. It is evident that second language learners are either left brain or right brain, which means that one side of their brain is dominant. If second language learners are mostly analytical and methodical in his or her in their thinking, or if a second language learner is mostly analytical and methodical in his or her thinking, he or she is said to be left brain. On the other hand, if he or she tends to be more creative or artistic, he or she is thought to be right brain. In reference to this, as English teachers or lecturers should be familiar with the characteristics of the second language learners or students that we teach, in order that we can accommodate, we can facilitate them to develop their both left and right brain. The following present the issue of a person who is left brain is often said to be more logical, analytical, and objective. On the other hand, a person who is right brain is said to be more intuitive, thoughtful, and subjective. Please ask yourself, what about you? Whether you have a left brain dominance or right brain dominance, or you have equal. Because if you have an equal left and right brain, you can do multitasking. That is the benefits of having equal left brain and right brain. According to Ovles 2011, second language learners with dominant left brain accommodation tend to have discussion, state logical arguments, solve problems well, and work accurately. On the other hand, second language learners with dominant right brain accommodation tend to learn visual to spontaneous activities, respond to demonstrating instructions better. It shows that the left brain students think logically and analytically. Added to this, they prefer the instructions and formulations. On the other hand, right brain students are creative and like doing experiments and learning new concepts. Ladies and gentlemen, Lego and Sipol 2012 suggests that when the process of English language teaching and learning is designed to activate two hemispheres of second language learners' brains, they are likely easier to lateralize the English materials. To sum up, the English materials should be designed to accommodate the activations of both hemispheres, namely right and left brains. To promote left and right brain dominance, second language teachers should employ the instructions which are related to the preferences of both brain hemispheres. The left brain second language learners are predominantly involved with analytical, logical thinking, especially in mathematics, verbal functions. Also, they deal with mainly linear and sequential activities namely moving from one point to next in step-by-step manner. On the other hand, the right brain second language learners specialize in holistic way of thinking and are primarily responsible for visual and spatial processing, orientation in space, body image recognitions of physics, artistics, endeavor, and creativity, according to Bielefeld, 2006. Brown in 2000, on page 54 to 55, highlights that left hemisphere of the brain has an ability in intellectual, logical, and analytical functions. It is indeed associated with mathematical and linear processing of information. On the other hand, the right hemisphere is associated with perceiving and remembering visual, textile, and auditory images. The balanced activations of left and right brain employed in the process of English language teaching and learning directly or indirectly facilitate second language learners to lateralize and obtain information or materials so that students could recall them wherever, whenever. This is called an acquisition. The following highlight the difference of the functions of left brain and right brain and the characteristics of left brain and right brain as mentioned earlier. Left brain deals with letters, numbers, words, while right brain deals with faces, places, objects, and the like. This says that when we deal with teaching English, when we deal with English language teaching and learning, material developments for our students, developing media, etc., we should accommodate the two issues, left brain, right brain, dealing with letters, numbers, words, faces, places, objects, and the like, in order that the development of left brain and right brain can be well. The following clearly presents hemispheric strengths, having left brain strengths and right brain strengths. Remember that language is a part of left brain, while a visual right brain strengths. In writing, it works left brain and the like. The following present or drive us to always think that when we are involved in English language teaching and learning, the characteristics of left brain and right brain should be a part of our English material, teaching learning processes, and then classroom activities, media development, assessments, and the like. And then we have what we call the left brain is also associated with the following issues. Yes, mentioned earlier: imagination, holistic thinking, intuition, arts, non-verbal cues, feelings, visualization, etc. Then the next one is how to deal with left and right brain dominance. As far as I'm concerned, when I conducted some observations at junior school level, senior high school levels, English language teachers mostly give an emphasis on the developments of what we call systemic knowledge when they present the macro language skills, listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Added to this, English language teachers or lecturers tend to do with micro language skills such as vocabulary, pronunciation, structure, and the like, depending on what macro language skills they present and what subjects they present to the students. The process underlying linguistic communication, speaking, and comprehending, as when we deal with the speak change, we are concerned with speaker, listener, when we are involved in English language teaching and learning, for example, and we are having communication with others, the following presents the speech change of the sensory nerves, our brain, vocal muscles, then feedback manifesting in sound waves in a simultaneous way. There is a control of our brain to do with feedback link through our ears. Then the sound waves are catched by the listener ears via sensory nerves, then they come to the brain. Therefore, the speech change activates some levels, including linguistic levels, physiological level, acoustic level, physiological level for listeners on the part of listeners, and linguistic level. This is the conversation practices that consists of what we call speaking and listening, reading, and then to writing as well. In addition, English language teachers tend to focus on systemic knowledge, phonological knowledge, morphological knowledge, syntactical knowledge, semantic knowledge, pragmatic knowledge, meaning that the left brain is dominant than the right brain. Therefore, to make it balanced, English language teachers are driven not to only deal with systemic knowledge, but they should also deal with schematic knowledge, which is processed in the right brain. The following present the development of processing in relation to level of processing, as mentioned earlier, systemic knowledge, embodying phonology, lexicon, syntax, semantic discourse, the knowledge of phonology, lexicon, syntax, semantics, and discourse, which deal with two issues, namely language productions and language perception here. We call it comprehension and production as the directions of processing involving linguistic descriptions, psycholinguistic experiments, neurolinguistics to have depth of processing in our brain. Remember that the information that we get should be placed in long-term memory processing or in a small brain in order that we can recall anytime. To do so, having balanced left and right brain should be given an emphasis. That is why schematic knowledge should be presented. It's not only systemic knowledge, but we also make it balanced between systemic knowledge and schematic knowledge, embodying socio-cultural knowledge, genre knowledge, domain knowledge, general knowledge. Socio-cultural knowledge will develop our right brain. The left brain is credited with language, but the right brain helps you understand context and tones. That is the balance between left brain and right brain. Therefore, when we are involved in English language teaching and learning, contextualization of the material that we present to the students should be highlighted, should be given an emphasis on. Otherwise, the left brain will develop. On the other hand, the right brain does not develop equally. In addition, the implementations of the use of left and right brain in English language teaching in order that they are equal in nature can be manifested in the way of developing media or use of media, material development, assessment practices, the teaching learning processes to deal with the functions of each brain. Take, for example, the following slide on the media. If we refer to this slide as one of the media to be used in English language teaching and learning, we can accommodate two types of brain, left and right brain. Of course, the teacher, the photograph of the feature will be assessed by the right brain. The color on the letters and the background will be assessed by the right brain, meaning that we accommodate the development of the right brain. On the other hand, the letters that we use having strong core competence, critical thinking, creative and innovation and the like will be assessed by the left brain. The next one is, this is the use of media which accommodate the development of left and right brain, looking at the pictures and the words, phrases used in the slide. A great number of media could be implemented when we deal with develop our brains, left brain and right brain. Take for example this one. This picture, the motions of the picture used in a slide could accommodate the development of right brain rather than left brain. And then this one, professional teacher will be assessed by our left brain. And the next one is see when they look, imagine when they see, think when they imagine, feel when they think, symbol when they feel. This media will accommodate the development of our brains, left brain and right brain. This is the activations of media to be used to attract students, to accommodate students in order that left and right brain could develop equally. And there are a good number of examples that English language teachers can use or activate when they are involved in English language teaching and learning, as mentioned earlier. Therefore, we come to the conclusion. The left and right dominant, the left and right brain dominance is of great importance on the parts of second language learners on the grounds that it could establish multitasking empowerment. Again, the left and right brain dominance is of great importance on the parts of second language learners on the grounds that it could establish multitasking empowerment. The next one is the left and right brain dominant is trainable. Again, it is trainable and teachable. The next one is the left and right dominance should be employed in four language skills as mentioned earlier, in the macro language skills such as listening, speaking, reading, and writing, in making sense of a text, and creating a text. In teaching and learning process, the teachers should consider and determine the appropriate materials, media development, assessment practices, and the like in order to facilitate students to enhance the development of their right and left brain. I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy if you have any question. Yeah. Thank you, Pak Basikin.
Thank you very much, Prof. Margono. Well, I think that's very interesting and inspiring presentation. And for teachers, for the current teachers, I think there is a big challenge in front of you or in front of us about planning and executing teaching that not only teach the health. So when we are teaching, we should start from the very beginning when we are planning that our teaching should be addressing both sides of the brain. Although there are differences in the functions, there is a strong belief that when both sides of the brains are all active, so the process will be better rather than only half of the brain that is active. Okay, we are going to have a question and answers today, and I would like to. Are there any questions already? And I would also like to comment on teachers that is charming teachers, and I think this is a new indicator in the teaching and learning, also in education system in Indonesia, that teachers should be charming. And I think charming here is not physically, but charming is those teachers who can engage their students in their learning, who can promote interaction among students, etc. That is charming. Okay, questions? Again. Or maybe while we are waiting for the questions, Prof. Margono, are you going to have a remark on the presentation?
All right, thank you very much, Pak Basikin. As mentioned earlier, English language teachers should realize that the development of right and left brain should be given emphasis. The left and right brain dominance.
There is one question for Professor Margon. This is the question. In this pandemic era, how can we use left and right brain approach in our teaching? So once again, in this pandemic era, how can we use left and right brain approach in our teaching?
Well, thank you very much. This is a good question. When we deal with in the pandemic era, the left and right brain could be developed with the employment of pedagogy. What we mean by pedagogy here is self-determined learning. Again, self-determined learning embodying the development of right and left brain dominance, meaning that the materials that the English language teachers develop should refer to the functions of each side of brain, namely left and right brain. It's not only dealing with completing the question and answers as performed in the textbooks, but English language teachers or English teachers should also accompany with the task with songs and the like. That is one of the way to develop what we call the left and right brain accommodation. Therefore, again, self-determined learning with the use of pedagogy, pedagogy, and cybergogy. So there are three things that we have to highlight. The first is pedagogy, approach, a paradigm, giving an emphasis on self-determined learning on the part of the students. And the second one is pedagogy. What we mean by pedagogy here is providing second language learners to interact one another. And the last one is the use of IoT or Internet of Things. So we call it cybergogy. Added to this, we should refer to three principles: learn to learn, learn to unlearn, and learn to relearn. What we mean by learn to learn here, refers to the material that the English language teachers want to focus, while learn to unlearn is not only in the materials, but the environment, the atmospheres of the material should be highlighted too. And we should also drive students to learn to relearn. So there are three principles to accommodate the development of left and right brain dominance. Thank you. Excuse me, Pak Bazikin, please unmute.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a new habit in talking. I have to unmute and mute. Okay. So this is the second question. So, what tips can you suggest in teaching English in order that our student can use their left and right brain maximally?
Thank you. The second question is also challenging for me in particular. So far, we have what we call teaching focusing on systemic knowledge. Rarely do English teachers deal with schematic knowledge. Therefore, contextualizations of the materials should be highlighted when we are involved in English language teaching and learning, because contextualizations of the materials is a part of developing the right brain and left brain. In order that the students could lateralize the materials, meaning that they could put the materials in small brain or long-term memory called acquisition. Thank you.
I always forgot. Okay, this is a very interesting question from, I think, from our ex-students. He's from Pemalang, I believe. I'll just read it. Pak Margono said teachers think and feel like students. How can we think and feel like them with suitable and healthy boundaries as their teachers? So there should be a distance, according to Novia. Please, Prof. Margono.
Okay. As mentioned earlier, with the use of paradigm pedagogy in this case, new paradigm, namely pedagogy, we should think that students are our friends. We should think that students are the agents of change, not the objects of change. Therefore, we should inspire them. We should keep the patience to them in order that they do what we call deep learning. If we accommodate students to do deep learning, I believe that they will be very happy with our materials because they have, on the part of the students, there is self-determined learning habits. That is the answer. Thank you. Do I answer her question?
Yeah, I think so. Novia, can we have Novia's voice? No. Okay, unfortunately no. Prof. Margono, is it possible that we still have one last question?
That's okay.
Okay. So this is from Rina Desitarahmi, SPD M Home. Is there any activity you've ever done in your online class that supports right and left brain? I think this question is in part by, do you teach what you preach? Please, Prof. Margono.
Okay, this is that I that I always highlight. This is that what I highlight when we deal with teaching for my students, teaching my students. I always think to deal with left and right brain dominance, because having left and right brain dominance, they could do multitasking. As mentioned earlier, if we can balance between left and right brain dominance on the part of the students, they will be successful in acquiring the materials or language that they study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Margono. It's empowering presentation and also question and answers. For those who still have questions, but unfortunately there is no time to answer it, so you can just write your questions, and the committee will pass your questions to Pak Margono, and hopefully Pak Margono still have time to answer your question in written. As a token of appreciation, how could I be sure that you are clapping your hands? Can we give Prof. Margono a big applause? Thank you very
I'm
much.
clapping for Pak Margono.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really, really enjoyable to speak in front of the computer. Okay, now we are going to have our second sessions, and I'm happy to see this very charming young gentleman with a very nice smile. And I think this would be in a lot of my classes.
I'm your students. I'm your students, sir.
And you look even more charming. In our second session, we will invite Dr. Ibrar Bhatt, that will be talking together with Mr.
Udi.
Mr. Udi Samanhudi. And Ibrar will talk about research productivity in Indonesia, a study of academics writing. And I will let Ibrar and Udi to arrange the turn of speaking and how they are going to present together the presentation.
Yeah.
Ibrar and Udi, time is yours.
Thank you, Ibrar.
Thank you, and thank you, Professor Basikin and Dr. Margana. Could I check first of all that everybody can see our PowerPoint?
Yes.
And hear me okay?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And if I do sometimes look to the side, it's because I have two screens, and you are on one screen, and my PowerPoint is on one screen here. So,
you look happy today.
Great to see you all. Thank you for inviting me back. Selamat sore to everybody, and I hope everybody's doing well in the current situation in Indonesia. I hope I'm a little bit worried that this paper is not closely connected to Professor Margana's talk, but I'm going to try and make some connections, but I don't think I can make any right now. But so the topic of the talk is research productivity in Indonesia, from academic writing to academics writing. So the subject of our research is actually academics of every discipline and all different kinds of universities in Indonesia. So not necessarily English language teaching, although we approach this as applied linguists. Udi and I approach this topic as applied linguists, and it fit well with our previous research. So if you're an English teacher working in academia in Indonesia, this will be relevant to you if you are subject to the conditions of academic professional work, publication, writing, research, etc. And if you're not an English language teacher, but you're an academic, it is also relevant to you. So that's the basic sort of context. Whilst we are delivering this presentation and talking to you about our research and our findings, we would like you to reflect on these 6 questions. And perhaps we can reflect on them, you can reflect on them personally during the presentation, but you can also write your responses to these in the chat box after the presentation. So we'd like you to answer these during after the presentation is over, but you can just see them there. Some questions about your writing as an academic, and how you, what you like, what you dislike about academic writing, how your writing has evolved over time, and how social media use connects with your writing, whether you are international and what that even means. These are some of the themes that we that come out in our research when we researched Indonesian academics. So it's always good to find out how people respond to these questions. So the research builds on some of my prior research on the subject of writing, both student writing and writing in the work of academic professionals. I was involved in the Lancaster University ESRC project, which looked at academics in English universities, and we looked at different kinds of universities and many different disciplines, and we examined how academic productivity is linked to a culture of writing. And Udi also has recently completed his doctorate, which looks at discourse in an Indonesian academic context of publication writing. And so the current project that we're speaking on builds on both of our prior research. Udi, did you want to say something there?
We can continue with the next slide, I think. Yeah.
So, Udi, do you want to come in and discuss?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yes, throughout this study, we are interested in providing a better understanding of the perspective of Indonesian academics, especially early career academics who are at the same time undertaking their doctorate degree in one research intensive university here in the UK. So there are some encouraging situations in Indonesia or factors that really, that really attract us to conduct this study, like the government policy on writing for publications for academics in Indonesia. A lot of us are really frustrated because of this, like stronger demand to publish in high-rank international reputed journal. But at the same time, we have a lot of difficulties to access high English reputed journals because lack of universities where we are working subscribes to databases like Scopus and so on. So a lot of this confusion, a lot of challenges faced by most of Indonesian academics, and this really attracts us to better understand the perspective of these young academics in their practice of academic writing. And another issue which is also interesting, that's why we conduct this study, is that the shift between teaching orientated into research. So academics in Indonesia in general, what I feel is that the identity as a researcher is much preferred now rather than teacher educator or teacher lecturer. So we really want to understand more this kind of shift between the two identities, from lecturers teaching in university to lecturers as researchers. And there is another issue that is also very interesting to understand from our participant, that is related to the award system. We will get incentive when we, for example, could publish in high-rank international journals, and we want to know whether this kind of reward from the government is another interesting thing that encourage or help them to write in high-rank international journals. So the perspective around this issue, like the policy by the government, and then the shift between the two identities from the teachers and researchers, as well as this kind of award system by the government, really become very important part that we really want to know from our participants. So those three issues are three main issues that encourage Ibrar and me to conduct this study. And Ibrar, maybe you want to add?
Yeah, I mean that's all very apt. So when I was working on the English project at English universities at Lancaster University, we found that the system of research evaluation and the system of rewarding and measuring the research work of academics is being exported from the UK to other parts of the world, including Asia. And over the last decade, the Indonesian Ministry of Research and Technology in Higher Education has stipulated directives to improve the quality and quantity of academic publications emerging from the country's private and public universities. And this has come with an increase in funding as well, with the condition that Indonesian academics should manage their own research writing and do more research writing. And so, alongside this, there's been a huge increase in the number of international doctoral scholarships for Indonesian students who are attaining places in research-intensive universities globally, in the hope that they will come back, bring their networks with them, and produce more scholarly writing to improve the country's higher education system. And the writing is a way of judging the academics and measuring their work quality. And so there is a need to examine this. So what does it mean to be a publishable international scholar? So that was the context basically of our research. So in light of these trends sweeping Indonesia, but also other parts of Asia, in this paper we report on this research which sought to examine the culture of writing in Indonesian higher education. So we used a cross-disciplinary sample of, at the moment it's 20 Indonesian academics, but we are currently undertaking the research still. So we're reporting on what we've found so far, but we have, at the moment, we're reporting on 20 Indonesian academics, a mixture of male and female, and a mixture of people from all different parts of Indonesia, and lots of different disciplines, including STEM subjects, art and humanities, and business and marketing, linguistics, and various other disciplines as well. We decided to focus on a sample of academics who have who have recently completed their doctorates within 4 or 5 years in research-intensive universities globally. So the top 200, if you want to put a criterion on that. And so they're a mixture of men and women, and they're from all different parts of Indonesia. And so there's 20. So these are the research questions here, sorry. So we sought to examine how knowledge is produced and disseminated through strategic and calculating writing practices, how certain journals get targeted, and how writing development is very closely connected to the doctoral process, and where systems of support can be implemented. So we wanted to look at how Indonesian academics are learning to write as academics, how digital technologies are shaping their new writing practices, and the role that doctoral training plays in this new identity, and how new international scholarly identities are emerging. So I mentioned the 20 participants so far. We're still recruiting participants, but we have 20 so far. And out of those 20, we have 10 focal participants. So what that means is that they were subject to a 3-stage data collection process, a qualitative data collection process, because we theoretically come from the standpoint that writing and literacy are a form of social practice. That means to truly understand literacy and writing, you have to see it in its context. You can't see it outside of context. And so we're trying to capture that context in the lives of the individuals. From the 10 focal participants, we conducted a detailed interview at the start, which examined the history of writing in their life and academic writing and how they've developed in their careers so far. Then we did a recording of a particular writing task that they're working on. And we recorded that and we did a video log of that. And the 2 links there, the 2 references are accounts of how I have used a similar methodology in different research. So if you're interested in the videographic method of capturing writing, that's talked about extensively in those 2 publications. And then after the recording, we did another interview with the participants where we talked about their writing at the moment and in the future. So So we sort of, the data collection was done over a period of about 6 months to a year, and we were able to get a picture of their writing past, their writing present, and their writing future. And the other 10 participants just had one interview which tried to capture elements of the 2 interviews done with the other 10 participants. So what we're going to outline to you today are some findings from the interviews, not the video recordings, not just yet. So that's basically the methodology of the research. The interviews also examine professional writing practices in their institution, their histories, their collaboration practices, their academic identities, and so that's what we're going to report on. So one of the among the project's key findings were about how Indonesian academics are becoming international academics, and how and how they see themselves in that way. So much of the becoming international is related to writing and publishing in the context of changing incentivization and reward systems in Indonesian universities. It's become increasingly important for Indonesian academics to work with and co-publish with international colleagues, because international publications yield higher citation rates. There was an assumption that publishing in an internationally renowned journal will gain a wider readership, and we also found that international identity varies across different participants. There's also a kind of internationalization where people bring their networks from their PhD work and their supervisors and their fellow PhD students into the world of the career after their PhD is over. And there's also different kinds of internationalization we've noticed in the data. Some of our participants are interested in having an international representation within the region of Southeast Asia. So they'll be connecting more with Chinese or Japanese or Malaysian academics. So here are some quotes from the data which talk about this. So many of the academics, when we ask them about how if they view themselves as international academics, many of them said that yes, they do, because they have an international degree and they had an international supervisor, and they saw that as the basis of that identity. But some of them didn't. Some of them had higher aspirations and said they haven't written enough publications or haven't done enough research work with people in different parts of the world to be considered international. And some of them talked about their internationalization in relation to post-PhD work. So in the data, we found that whenever becoming international was discussed by the Indonesian academics, it was discussed alongside writing and indicators for writing. Academic publishing as a social practice is very much closely connected to international work. Many who wrote for international audiences often invited international academics to write and also be on editorial boards. And many of the academics in the study also hope to use their doctoral experience to develop internationally. And so what it means to be international is varied across participants. You'll see with Rani, who is in accounting, she said, I do not consider myself an international academic because I'm stuck with admin duties. Gerinda says that she focuses on her Mandarin, and that makes her academic, so she can work with international, so she can work with academics in Asia, and that having more than one affiliation is powerful. And so there, and Nuri, who's education in a public university, says that being international means that I'm invited to speak as a plenary speaker in different universities. So he has a different understanding. And Lisa, who's in education, says that she already has an international identity because she was immersed in her PhD in an international context. So that's an interesting finding there that we wanted to share with you. Udi, do you want to mention anything on that? Hello? Okay. So the next, and very related to this, is the issue of collaboration and co-authorship. One of the important dimensions to becoming an international academic is collaborating and co-authoring. There is, of course, an important distinction to be made between doing research as collaborating and writing together as co-authoring. They're not the same thing, but many of our participants tended to underline their claims with the assumption that collaboration would lead to co-authoring. Many of our participants, and these are 3 characteristic quotes from the data, they tended to see collaborating as part of broader work in their institution, such as establishing memoranda of agreement with universities in other countries and inviting guest speakers to local conferences. But co-authoring was also serving more individual needs rather than institutional needs. And so collaborating was linked to mentoring, as Lisa highlights here. A collaborator plays a role as a reader who checks the clarity and alignment of my writing and giving feedback on the quality of my writing. And so many people viewed collaboration as a form of learning and mentoring. All the participants felt the need to co-author more often and to leverage and use networks internationally in order to achieve this. What I mentioned earlier about people's networks from their doctoral programs, they were also very important and very salient to the development of their co-authoring. Nuri here says that he started collaborating even during his PhD, both with his supervisor and with other PhD students, who then later graduated.
I'm back.
Are you back, Udi?
Yeah, sorry, connection problem. Oh my.
All right. So do you want to mention anything on collaboration and co-authoring?
Oh yeah. It's very interesting when, for example, I think most of the participants say that doctoral degree program offices is like an opportunity for them to build their international identity through collaborations and co-authorship. They start, for example, writing for publications together with their supervisor, and according to them, this is like the very first stage for them to say build their international identity. And collaboration through academic publication with the supervisor and also with the peers, other doctoral students who are lecturers in other, countries, also become like strategic path for them to build this kind of identity. So most of the participants really value the doctoral program offices, because yes, according to them, this is like a shortcut for them to start to build the international identity as a lecturer in Indonesia, given the fact that according to them is that they previously have really huge problems, especially those whose backgrounds is not like from English department, or say from lecturers from health, for example. They say that they have a very minimum or skills in English, especially academic English. But then when they started their doctorate degree here, for example, in this university, they start learning a lot from their supervisor, and they start building their confidence to write academic for then publishing in high-ranked international journals. Some of them have been successful, some have not, but they really value the collaborations and co-authorship, especially with the supervisor. Yeah, Ibrar.
Thank you, Udi. That's actually very closely connected to the next slide, and that is the role of the doctorate in the process of writing. So the role of the doctorate was a key part of this study. It emerged a lot. According to the participants of the study, the expectations of their doctorates are very firmly intertwined with their professional expectations as academics. For them, undertaking a doctoral degree, especially in a research-intensive university, primarily offers international networking opportunities This networking begins for most people through the research with their supervisor, who at a later stage they would expect to write with, or at least to develop a network with, that they can bring into their Indonesian institution when they start work. And more substantive work like memoranda of agreements or various other things, projects. There's also an expectation that as academic colleagues, the doctoral process will lead to further cooperation, such as visiting scholar programs, lecturing programs, etc. This expectation is not always very well communicated to the supervisor or to the institution to which the Indonesian academics are, in which the Indonesian academics are studying. And we think that's a very important issue, that if the Indonesian students are a very key market for research intensive universities, then their expectations need to be agreed when they arrive for a doctorate there. And so that was a key part. And in terms of what the participants said, here are two characteristic quotes that we decided to select for this paper. Maybe doctoral scholarship agreements should contain a requirement to publish at the end of the doctorate. PhD by publication is one pathway, but in the PhD by thesis pathway, the responsibility to publish is on the candidate only. And so perhaps there is something to learn from this and to perhaps incorporate into the scholarship agreements some sort of agreement around publication writing. And so Budi, who's a linguist at a private university, he says that the doctoral research gives him the opportunity to interact, to discuss with different academics, and to learn and to read publication articles from different perspectives. And Dika, a pharmacist, says that, why did I choose to be a PhD student? The first thing that I have to think about is my profession. I'm a lecturer, so I have to increase my knowledge and my ability, especially in pharmaceutical technology. I had to take this degree to fulfill my requirements as my university and to my university and my government. So it was really a professional decision, but that has implications for academic career work afterwards. Being somebody who's just completed his doctorate, Udi, do you want to add to that?
Oh yeah, I think another important information that we can share is that like the cooperation between, university. Like if I continue my doctoral degree program overseas, then I would have actually another additional task, that is to bring cooperations between my university back home in Indonesia and, for example, here with Queen's University Belfast. So the doctoral students that I interview, for example, also mentioned this as part of their doctoral degree. In Indonesia and the university where they are undertaking their doctoral degree here, for example, in universities in the UK. So I think this is an interesting issue. So when we are speaking about doctoral degree program or doctoral students from Indonesia who are actually like lecturers in Indonesia, they bring with them this kind of missions, and their task is actually double. Not only to get the degree in order to be more eligible as a lecturer in Indonesia, but also like building this kind of partnership in the future. So that's also what the majority of the participants said during the interview, which I think everyone need to really know. Yeah, thank you, Ibra.
So the next thing that we examined was barriers and difficulties with writing. This is an important thing because one of the things we found is that, and Udi will explain this in more depth, is that there is an expectation to write. There is actually a pressure to write, but there is no real facilitation of it. And the workload culture, the workload model is not really taking this into account. So the most common barrier in academic productivity, well, one of the most common was the language barrier. That's one issue. And then and then additionally, limited access to research resources and limited funding was cited as another major factor for most participants. Those participants who were conducting their doctorates at the time of the research talked about new changed policies from the government, which would allow them into a changing working environment. Lack of space was a big factor, as Lisa mentions in this quote. She told us that my university is lacking in the facilities for writing, like desks and rooms, unlike her economic faculty where everybody has a desk. She also says that this would not happen in a private university where things are more open and people are supportive of lecturers, even sending lecturers to study abroad from their own funds. And you know, lack of funding and time was another one. Udi, do you want to jump in there on that?
Udi?
So, are you there?
Well, I think Udi lost his connection.
Oh, okay. Well, he'll probably come in a minute. So, so mainly workload models, how people are sort of bogged down with admin work and unable to actually find the time and the space for academic writing. So when we ask participants where do they prefer to write, almost all the participants said at home. Not in the office. And this is something that was also echoed within the project that I did at Lancaster University, which looked at English academics. Academics preferred to do research writing at home, and other forms of writing, like teaching related writing within their office in the institution. So there's also a limitation regarding resources and access to the right journals. Some universities didn't have that problem, and some universities did. The main thing we found was that there is a shift and change in policy and expectation, but not in the way that that's being practically facilitated. Udi, you're back. Turn yourself off mute. Yeah, carry on, sorry.
All right, so I think one of the huge impact of this lack of exposures to high-rank international journal, for example, is that their lack of ability in terms of like academic English. So they say that they have very limited, you know, opportunities to develop their writing skills because of this lack of, you know, support in terms of access to higher international journals. Because to their best understanding, when they have a lot of models to read and to follow, then they would be able to improve their writing skills in English better. And another issue also related to like the understanding of the current topics in the field. They complain about this lack of facilities because they say that they don't have a lot of information in their mind related to, for example, recent topics within their own disciplines. One of the colleagues, for example, from the fields of nursing, say that he got a lot of, you know, barriers related to this access to high-rank international journal for modeling, and they he say that it's quite hard for him before coming here to study their doctorate or to start the doctorate to improve their writing skills. Although he joined a lot of trainings, but he said exposure to high international journal is still very important as part of his learning and part of, you know, his way to accelerate his skills in writing academic English in the fields of nursing. So again, the huge impact of of this limited access to literature is that their inability to, you know, to improve their academic English as quick as they expected.
One of the, as we will see in a later slide, we asked participants how they developed in their writing, how they learned and how they improve. And one of the key findings there was that people improve through reading as much as possible. And as Udi has mentioned, if people's reading is limited in terms of access to resources, then they won't be able to improve as much. And so we will get to that in a later slide. But when people, and so how the participants use social media to develop their writing, and the link between their writing practices, their academic identity, and their social media practices is also a very important part of the research, and very important findings have emerged. So we found broadly that people use social media for a few different aims and objectives. One of the main ones is to create awareness around their research, to get more people to read their research. Erpin, a food scientist, says that when I saw my recent publication, it had been read by 1,000 people. It was very interesting, and that motivated him to develop a social media profile for his academic work. Dina says that she joined academic writing workshops and an academic writing group, which was mentored by a credible professor. So we see again the mentoring aspect emerges not just in collaborating, not just in co-authoring, but the mentoring emerges as also a part of the online identity, that people go online to join communities to also get further guidance and help. And people's online community building is it's a very interesting field of study, and people can be part of multiple groups online, and sometimes develop immensely in their academic and in their professional capabilities. Rio, who's an academic in linguistics, says that it doesn't mean that social media is specific for friendship, but I sometimes use it for the project and the research. I try to connect with other researchers around the globe and try to chat with them and ask for references. So again, when access is a problem, you can go online and ask people. I myself have done that when my own institution doesn't have access to a paper or to a journal. I will ask people from other universities. ResearchGate and academia.edu are really important. We found that they were very important in the research because they allowed participants to access research for which they may not have access within their university, or even stuff that has not been published yet. And LinkedIn was also used quite a lot for that. And so how people use social media and how it connects to their writing. There are multiple intentions at play, and it's actually quite creative. We've seen some quite creative practice of social media use in amongst the participants. Udi, anything to add there?
Yeah. If I may add, it's about like the participants value the like trainings that highlight the importance of social media to connect with other researchers, as well as to publish or to socialize or to promote their research or their publication. So a lot of trainings, for example, in the School of Postgraduate here in this university has like opened their mind about the importance of social media, not only like to update their status of like problems they have, for example, in their daily life, in running the life, but they now start building awareness that social media is an effective means for them to to further connect their study or their publication with other researchers. So they value, for example, ResearchGate and then Academia Edu, even Facebook. They say that now they are not thinking Facebook simply as a means for them to to tell people about their like their say problems or whatever, but they now concern more on using social media like Facebook to also share their publications with more wider public. So I think the lesson is that training on this kind of building awareness in terms of social media and connecting this with the issue of publication is also very important. I'm not saying this is not a lot in Indonesia, but again, trying to have more and more training on like linking social media with publication is also a very important lessons that we can share throughout the study.
Thank you, Udi. So another key finding was examining how people learn to write as academics. Learning to write as an academic was expected to emerge from mentoring and networking within the data, but no clear idea of how it is to be achieved or any clear expectations of learning, but they were dependent on the doctoral process and the mentoring through supervision. And again, I go back to this idea of expectation. Expectations were not clear between the Indonesian academics and their PhD supervisors. And expectation was also not clear from the Indonesian academics and their own management within their institutions. And so supervisors often feel that the PhD students should have some academic writing ability before they start the PhD. And with some development through the process. So that's always not communicated either. So there's a couple of quotes there about how people develop to write, learn to write through the PhD process, the PhD process, learning to write, and also much of which was connected to actual reading. So having access to work and then reading it, but also getting feedback from supervisors as well. Networking was very closely connected to learning to write. So most of the academics who learned to write effectively learned to write because they had people whom they could share their work with and get informal as well as formal feedback. So we found that learning to write was a key goal. It was part of the doctorate. Most of it was expected to come from supervisors, and there was not enough support and not enough indication of what learning should look like. And we also found different conceptions of critical thinking and what these things are. Udi, you want to mention something?
Yes, one of the biggest complaint, if I may say complaint, yeah, one of the biggest complaints shared by the 10 participants is about writing critically. They said that they were very surprised when, for example, they studied their first paper here when they embarked their doctoral degree.
You're on mute.
To write your paper critically, and they got very confused with what is actually critical thinking means and what the standard of the criticality itself. Another important issue related to critical thinking that they mentioned is that like the lack of explorations of critical thinking in the context of academic writing in most universities in Indonesia, referring to their previous education in Indonesia. They say that there is no such kind of very explicit teaching about critical thinking in the context of academic writing. So when they came here, they study in the doctoral level with such a huge demand on criticality expression within their papers. They got very confused and they found it very challenging stage in their doctoral life. So again, the lesson is that we may need to think more now about what it actually means by critical thinking in academic writing context. And we need to explore more and teach this again in academic writing classes in Indonesia. But I believe that we can, incorporate this not only in language teaching, but in other subjects, so that for example, everyone in Indonesia, like postgraduate students in the level of master's or doctoral degree, really understand what we mean by critical thinking in the context of academic writing. So when they come into writing for publication, which demands such kind of they understand better. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that, Udi. So concluding, what it means to be an academic in Indonesia and what it means to be doing academic work has changed radically over the last 10 to 15 years. And so that's what we're trying to capture here. Changing practices across disciplines, across institutions, and across the whole of the country. And so some key questions emerge, including, is the doctorate a suitable enough apprenticeship for a higher education? and there is a a disjuncture between the needs of the new academics in Indonesia and the old guard of previous academics who are working according to a new system, a previous system. And so that needs to be examined. Also, so while this research focuses on divergences occur across gender, career stages, subject specialisms, and status of the university. So these divergences suggest further routes for fine-grained research exploration. So there's a pressing need to examine the role of the doctorate, but also internal politics within Indonesian universities. The participants, some of them spoke about long hours that they have to spend teaching in universities and doing admin work, and how the journey or the sojourn abroad doing their doctorate was the only time that they had to write, to produce publications. And they haven't had the time since they got back from their PhD. And this is an issue around workload models. As models of research evaluation are adopted in countries like Indonesia, what about the institutional structure to support that new work? And so those are some of the questions that are relevant to the future of this kind of project and this kind of research. Anything to add there, Udi?
Okay. I'm okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, academia is a globally connected network of people and institutions and projects and various actors in this way, in the work of knowledge production. And the kinds of systems and structures that are in the UK now are being introduced in different parts of the world. And and research productivity is closely linked with internationalization. And many academics face particular challenges within their different locations. Indonesian academics are facing particular resource constraints and infrastructural problems that render their experience of academic work quite unequal when attempting to collaborate with partners in other universities. And so this is something that we think needs to be addressed. We think that objective career success needs to be clearly defined, and professional development framework needs to be defined, and particularly in Asian universities, and particularly in terms of, also we think that some more preparatory work in respect of English language competency and academic writing, as Udi has mentioned, should be developed as well, prior to the PhD, prior to the doctoral process, as part of the professional development process. So these are the questions that we ask you to reflect on at the start, and please let us know what your responses are to them in the chat box. Well, thank you. That's the end of the presentation. I will just go back there.
Thank you.
So I'll leave those questions, unless Udi's got something to add.
Yeah, maybe Udi would like to make a concluding remark for the presentation.
We are still actually waiting for responses of this reflection.
Yeah.
Before, or maybe Ibra, you want to say something as a remark of our presentation?
Well, I've concluded. I've said that we need to develop, and we need to address some of these changes and make a sort of a framework around professional development in Indonesia for academics, and maybe make some changes to doctoral agreements so that Indonesian academics are better prepared for their academic professional life after their doctorate.
Right.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's information that you can face actually to a certain extent expected, because I believe that in Indonesia, in the Indonesian context, the changing what it means by being academics is at the beginning of the era. So hopefully it will be progressing quite well. And we believe that are those who you interviewed mostly young academics, or?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
all of them are early career academics.
Yeah, that's why the response to a certain extent is optimistic, but there are also anxiety about what is going on and what is going to happen. Okay, I would like to invite questions, or there are actually questions. Udi and Ibra, can you access the question and answers and pick questions that are addressed to you?
Yeah, I'm just going through it, and I can't. There are some mostly comments here.
About I think I found one. Fuad Arif Fudiartanto. The question from him. This one is about his or other people concerns about the hegemony of English compared to other languages. So, do you think there is such hegemony?
Oh, well, of course there is.
Yeah. Okay.
As we're talking, we're doing this.
And then is that a problem?
Look, hegemony is always a problem. However, we also need a standard. If we didn't have a standard, we wouldn't be able to disseminate research, to have these discussions that we're having right now. I think UK academics or Anglosphere academics need to make more of an effort in learning the languages of their collaborators. And to actually, in order for their research to have a proper impact, a positive impact in the countries where they do their research, I think people like me should, and I do try to make that effort, rather than using the opportunity to do their research in a certain country for their own career progression back home in the UK or in Australia or in America. I think there is hegemony, and but I also think that we also need a standard that we can communicate.
And is that hegemony so overwhelming? Do you think when you are working with writers from Indonesia, say, for example, do you feel that hegemony is so overwhelming?
Well, depends what kind of work it is. When I edit for journals, especially when I'm the guest editor for special issues, and I've done a special issue very recently, and I am working on another book, and we have a policy, my co-editor and myself, that we will mentor the writers from countries who where English is not their first language, to help them develop their paper to get it published. And we've done that with a few of our contributors. That takes a lot of time. We are not paid for that. We are not rewarded for it. Nobody knows that mentoring happened. So I think there needs to be there is hegemony, but there needs to be some sort of a way of dealing with it from the part of the English-speaking world. They are taking but not giving enough back, and not making an effort, if I'm totally honest. And so perhaps with the Indonesian students as an important student market, with all of these scholarships going around the world, perhaps they need to exert a bit more agency in making some conditions to those doctoral scholarships so that their people are better prepared when they come back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if they don't get those agreements, well, maybe they shouldn't send their students to those universities.
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes money.
Okay. Will you say something or just laugh?
I will say something. I think because this is about hegemony, Ibrar is the right person to answer, but I would like to answer, of course.
Do you feel hegemony?
Yeah, it is. Yes, actually, we are struggling in order to publish in higher international journal. Sometimes when I fail to publish my paper, for example, I said, "Oh, this hegemony is, like so bad." So I feel like I'm really in a disadvantaged position when I'm speaking about hegemony issue, because it is a hegemony, because we need to write something in a language that we do not speak in our daily life. So it is hegemony. But again, Ibrar is right. We are in a situation in which we need to go on with this kind of situations at the minute. So we need to do something. We need to try to adjust ourselves with the situation by, for example, keep improving our academic English through trainings. Ibra, right? For example, aid have been made, have been conducted by, you know, for example, academics from here across the globe. They, you know, for example, they send the trainers to a lot of countries in Asia in order to teach, to train how to write academic English, for example, for publication purpose. So this kind of efforts should now be made more and more in order to help young academics in Indonesia to write and publish in higher international journal, because the fact the government actually support this hegemony. Why? Because they say, come on, you write in English, a paper in English and publish. So this is actually, you know, in line with the hegemony itself rather than against to it. We are actually trying to respond to this hegemony. So the idea is that now I'm trying to be more realistic, that let's do something to improve our academic English, try to understand better how a paper in English is written in terms of, you know, like the conventions of writing, the typical of structure and so on, so that we can, you know, be more successful in publishing our research paper in the future. So that's my thought about hegemony.
Yeah. Is there any other questions that you identify that is addressed to you, Ibra and Udi? Yeah, most of the statement are something like comments or suggestions or curhat. Do you know curhat?
Do you know curhat, Ibra?
Some of them are comments. What?
I think Pak Basikan can translate it. Can help.
Okay. I found something interesting here. Ibra, you said that the reward systems that is applied in Indonesia at the present time is actually imported from England, right?
Well, no, the evaluation, the system. Well, not exactly, because our evaluation system has changed slightly. Although there is the actual evaluation system, and then there's what people do in the university and in the department, which is not always reflective of. So, for example, we theoretically we are not supposed to judge a paper by the journal that it is in. We're not supposed to pay attention to the journal. We're supposed to pretend we didn't see it. We're supposed to judge the research on its own.
Okay.
And it could be a chapter in a book. It could be, you know, whatever it could be. And I have spoken to people who are on the Research Excellence Framework Evaluation Committee for the last Research Excellence Framework, and they told me categorically they did not look at the journal. They did not care about the impact factor or the Scopus index of the journal. They just wanted to see the research on its own, because you can get you can get an average paper in a good journal, and you can get a great paper in an average journal. And so that was reflected in their judgment. However, on the ground, in the universities and in the departments, people still use the quality of the journal as a proxy measurement of the quality of news, which is what happens in Indonesia. It doesn't. Nobody really probably even reads the paper, and except for the people using it. When they're judging it, they just want to know which journal it's in, and they use the journal's quality as a proxy to judge the paper's quality. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
So some aspects of it are judging, research, measurement, and things like this. Yeah. Although it's less, it's actually a little bit more harsh in Indonesia in that respect.
Yeah, it is.
Because the paper is judged on the journal, not on the paper itself.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the Chinese used to give you a very good bonus when you wrote a paper financially. I think some of the universities still do it, but officially it's not. It's been they stopped doing it.
And do you think such kind of reward is effective?
Well, money is always effective, basically. But,
right.
one of the most effective things in the world. But I don't know. I guess so. I mean, it doesn't feel very nice to have everything attached to money all the time.
Yeah.
You look at things in terms of productivity in a Henry Ford sort of way, then you know.
Okay, and this is probably the last questions. You know that most of our universities in Indonesia are bound to Scopus or something, and this is also very strong. The influence is very strong because now our university is competing to elevate the rankings that under the QS rankings, which looked only at the papers published in Scopus. So will be a possibility in the future to happen about this proverb, something like publish or perish.
Well, that applies everywhere now,
Yeah.
which is this model. Not so much in the US, but in UK, Australia, Asian universities are adopting the publish or perish model.
Yeah.
We do not put too much attention in the UK on the Scopus. I mean, we believe it's there and it's useful to look at, and it is helpful. But if for REF purposes, research excellence framework, we are supposed to judge it individually as a piece of research. So some of my papers are in a new journal recently, Post Digital Science and Education, Springer Journal. Because it's a new journal, it's not Scopus indexed.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Because it's new.
Okay.
But I believe it's very promising, and it will be a high-level journal in Scopus probably a few years from now.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not pressured to publish in Scopus. But my research will be judged as individual research. But I wanted to publish in that new journal for because I'm thinking ahead, you know, in terms of like the direction of the journal.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. I would try to move away from that if you can, but if it's not in your hands, then.
Okay, committee. Okay, I think it's time to Madi. Oh, so we still have time. For how long?
Pak Basikin.
Yeah. Yeah.
May I say something about publish and perish?
Yeah, sure.
Well, yeah, to me, yes, publish and perish is actually a dogma in the academia, and I believe that most of academicians understand what we mean by publish and perish. But I think what is important now is that to take publish or say writing for publications as an agenda in our learning, because when we write, we're actually learning. So rather than thinking about writing, publish or perish, we better saying that publishing is actually learning. So when we speak about, like our professional agenda as a lecturer is actually a learner. A learner means that somebody who keep learning all the time, and writing could be a medium to improve our knowledge. When we read and then we continue by writing, then we could understand more. So I would see like publish and perish here rather than saying something that is really threatening, but something that's really encouraging me to grow as an academician. So I would really, try to encourage academicians in Indonesia not to think about money. Yes, money is important. I love money. I'm really happy, so excited when I got funding and then I do research. But again, back again to our positions as a professional, as a lecturer, and then we need to learn. And this writing for publication is actually a means for us to learn and to grow as an academics. So slowly but surely, when we build this kind of mindset, then we are actually building, another identity. For example, when we are able to publish in higher international journal most of the time, at the same time, we're actually building our international identity. So I would see publish or perish as something threatening, but as something encouraging me to learn as a lecturer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ibrahim has already discussed this, but I would like to repeat because there's a question from Dr. Sudar MPD. So I will read for you, Ibrahim. How to be familiar with the international society, particularly in terms of writing academic or scientific writing. Here is writing in international journal. It is a question. Okay. So, you get a question?
Sorry, what's the question again? Sorry.
Okay, also, it's difficult to understand when I am reading it aloud. So I'll just read it for you. how to be familiar with the international society, particularly in terms of writing academic and scientific writing or writing in international journal?
One of the most important skills in research is networking, attending events online or face-to-face, and making connections with people whose work connects with your work, presenting your work. I mean, I'm doing it right now. I'm talking about my research with you in Indonesia in the hope that you would be interested in it and you would contact me later maybe, or I would contact you and we would develop another project or maybe write together. So the networking work is a very important part of being international. I'm doing it right now by trying to connect with you and talking to you about one project of mine. And then from there, another thing will develop and another thing will develop. And that's how research develops. That's how you develop the international worldview in the research, is that you network. And that means taking the step of putting yourself forward to do a seminar or a webinar, to talk about your work, promoting it, perfecting it first, making sure it's right, and then promoting it, and then hopefully getting some feedback as I'm getting from you in this process, and then writing about it. So there are many things to develop that international perspective, not just one thing, but we could call all of this networking. And it's a very important part of doing a PhD. I don't know who the questioner is, so I don't know if they are an academic or they're a PhD student, but I'll tell you this. I've got my PhD student list, just came in the other day, and I do not look at the grades that they got in their masters. I mean, I know that they are important, but they do not predict how good they will be as PhD students. What will predict how good they will be at PhD students is how well they can network, how well they can teach themselves the subject through me and through the resources of the library and everything else, and how well they can actually present their research. Because the master's course is only judged on assignments, and not everybody likes doing assignments. The PhD, you cannot judge. You cannot make an inference about somebody's the ability for them to write a PhD thesis and an assignment. They're completely, you cannot make a judgment from one to the other. Do you know what I'm saying? And so there are a different set of skills in the postgraduate world which we do not know about when we're in the world of a master's and undergraduate.
And also the problem is it's so individual.
Yes, it is very individual. Yeah.
Any
we still
question?
have time. Pak Basikin, I know speaking about international community is something broad, but to my understanding, when we are speaking about the world of academia, there are two kinds of communities. One is called like discourse community. The other one is professional community or community of practice. So when the question is about how to get access, for example, to discourse community, say discourse community is actually part of the international community. It's actually very simple. When we are dealing with writing for publication, we send it to, for example, an international high reputed journals, and then we get feedback from the reviewer. We are actually entering this community. We are actually in the conversations with the members of the international community called the discourse community, which is actually the community of our disciplines. If I am, for example, now called myself as an applied linguist, so my community of discourse would be related to this applied linguistic in English. So I'm actually now building my conversation with reviewers in higher international journals, which means that I'm trying to get access, and I've been in access to this kind of community. So that's one way to open up the door of the international community called like discourse community of our discipline. The second one, when we are speaking about professional community or community of practice, then we can go, for example, to conferences. There are a lot of authors. There are a lot of, like reviewers of high-ranked international journals might participate in the conferences. And Ibra, right, we can start building the network. We can start, like having informal chat or conversations regarding what is actually expected by high-ranked international journal reviewers, get to get like picture on what actually we need to improve in terms of, for example, our writing skills for paper publication in high-ranked international journals. So again, doors to open is actually related to these two communities, because when we speak about international community, we speak something even broader. So I specify into these two to make it more real and clear. Thank you.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. Ibra, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I was the same thing really. Your community building and your networking has to.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Do we have still some questions? Sudah yang punya Fuad sudah tadi. Wait. The next question is about. So still about hegemony, Ibra and Udi. I think this is interesting. I will read the question for you. I was once write a paper for the international audience and been criticized that my literature background lacked locally grounded literature review. How far do you see the use of local resources literature affected the quality of a paper?
Local literature? What do you mean by local?
Local resources literature.
So the
maybe
person
about local
article, and it was criticized because it lacked.
Yeah, maybe
maybe
contextual, maybe the context.
All right. Well, of course, if you're writing an article and you're writing a literature review, you will, if your research is based in a particular context, you should draw from the literature of that context or a similar context or the theme.
Yeah.
It depends on, so was it a peer review feedback or?
Yeah, I think so. He or she said his or her paper was criticized that the literature background, I don't know what is the literature background, lack locally grounded literature review. Maybe something like at the background, the rationale is not very, yeah. Do you get the point?
Well, I need to know. I'm not sure what they mean here, but if I'm doing research in Indonesian academics and I do not cite any research about Indonesia and academia in Indonesia, I mean, then I should have looked at that, right? I mean, that's one of the first things I should have read, surely.
Okay.
That would be local literature. I think that's how I understand.
Yeah, I think so. I think
but maybe there isn't any local literature, and maybe the person should say that there isn't enough local literature.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a lot of research in higher education in Indonesia.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So if there is, if you are talking about something for which there is not a lot of research, you can create a warrant for that in your paper by saying there is not a lot of research in this area, and the little bit that has been done has only looked at this and this and this. So it's about how to make that argument and to justify why you're not using enough local literature. Okay, that's the challenge there. That would be my feedback on the feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Well, do we still have time, Pak?
Yeah, you may say something.
Yeah, there is always an expectation, to my understanding, from reviewers about the importance of combining national references and international references. So when we write for international journal, say high-rank international journal, what I mean is that we need to always provide them with some context, because they don't understand about the context that we are, for example, doing the research. So an understanding of the context by the reviewer is really important. So that is why literature review or research conducted in the sites, for example, in Indonesian context, is also really important to be put in our paper. So again, put in our mind that when we are writing for a higher international journal, never thinks that local literature is not important. It should be there, because that support us to enrich the context in order to help the reviewer to understand the site we are doing, where we are doing the study.
Okay.
So I think that's what it tries to, to understand more about the local literature.
Yeah, I think so. I think the reviewer expects to see more contextual background, more information about the contextual background of the study, because sometimes or it is very often that writers just assume that the readers know our context.
Right.
Okay, I think that's the end of our presentation. Thank you very much, Ibrar and Udi, and for the
Thank you, Pak.
audience. Yep. Sorry.
Thank
Udi,
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay.
I say thank you. No,
Thank you very much. And as a token of
terima
appreciation,
kasih.
let's give Ibrar and Udi a very big applause. Thank you very much, Ibrar and Udi.
Virtual applause. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Dear audience, I think that's the end of our webinar today, and thank you very much for your participation and attendance, and I'll see you in another occasion. Thank you very much. Udah ini ya? Udah lupa dia.